be realistic with your expectations. Don't expect to magically be able to do all things at all times for every single, person in your life at that time. I would say be very intentional with your time. For me, a practicality for fathering to a new dad or to a 50-year something dad would be the simple component of being intentional with your time.
My friend, your role as a father is critical. You are so important. You matter. You are needed. 3 nuggets that hit me from my conversation with my friends Jordan and Ben today are: 1, the importance of evaluating regularly your priorities as a husband, man, and father. 2, what does it mean to be a good dude? And 3, what does it look like to have impact well beyond your lifetime? Welcome to Fatherhood Field Notes podcast, where I interview incredible fathers gaining wisdom from their stories for you and I to grow in our craft. I'm your guide, Ned Shout, father to 5 kiddos, currently ages 11 to 18, and husband to my rad wife, Sarah, working on our 20th year of marriage. So yep, I'm in the thick of it, and I am working daily to rebel against the low expectations for fathers and create a world where fathers know who they are as they show up for their families. You and I have the greatest opportunity to impact our world through the way we embrace our fatherhood role. This episode is brought to you by the Adventure of Fatherhood, helping men discover their powerful fatherhood role and build their fatherhood skills. The role of the father is to serve, guide, provide, protect, and of course, find joy and have fun in the messiness of it all. Today's guests are my new friends, Ben Briggs and Jordan Adent, with Good Dude, Good Dad. They share their mission, their vision, and their passion for helping dads lean into fatherhood. All right, Jordan and Ben from the Good Dude, Good Dad. Where are you guys at right now?
We are in Orange County, California, sitting in a warehouse.
Love it. I went to Vanguard. My first house was in Ladera Ranch. Oh, yeah. But as soon as I started having kids, I skipped town because I don't think I'd want to afford to live there with the 5 kids that I have.
I went to Vanguard. Yeah.
Did you? Well, I never graduated college, but I went for a while.
Got it.
I never graduated college either. So.
I barely did.
That GI Bill.
So, all right, Jordan and Ben, how old do each of you find yourself today?
I am 36. I'm 36.
Okay, so Ben's 36.
Yes.
I'm 33.
33. Okay. And you guys interview as a team. Is this kind of like a Step Brothers thing, or like how did this start up?
100%.
I tried to interview you separately, but you guys are like wearing tuxedos and you wouldn't separate. So why interview together?
You're sounding stupid. No, I was kidding. Yeah, so we're we do it as a team. We're the Good Dude, Good Dad duo. This is a brand that I started coming out of a stroke, just as a way to pass along my legacy, my thoughts, and my all the things that I've learned as a kid to my son. If I were to pass away, now I have another one and one on the way. And so it started as that, and then Ben kind of I'd kind of let it go, and Ben was like, "No, man, we need to bring this back together." And I was like, "All right, man. If I'm gonna do this, though, I'd really like to have a partner." And he was like, "I'm in." So since then, we've been going at it as a team.
That's what he said.
What he said. Got it. Perfect. Okay. So Good Dude, Good Dad. I'm rocking one of your guys' t-shirts right now. Love the branding. Super cool. You guys got a podcast. What else do you guys have going on? And let's have this is Ben. What do you got going on? And then Jordan, you tell me what Good Dude, Good Dad means.
Yeah. Do you want to know what's going on like outside of this, like work-wise, or just in Good Dude, Good Dad?
In Good Dude, Good Dad.
So awesome question. We have obviously big dreams, big goals. Right now, the podcast is simply it's kind of how Jordan started it as a podcast, but I saw it more as a brand and an ability to build a community through merch, right? Through branding, through cool shirts, hats, whatever. I kind of have been good at creating brands through using merch, and obviously, the more people that wear it, the more people that see it, the more people can feel like they belong. So for us, It's about just creating an actual community that we can provide some substance to people, create a space where we can kind of break the norm of what people think a tough guy is, or a good dude, or a good dad is, and just use other people's experiences, stories, obviously using our own life stories and our own life experiences. And the goal is to try to just help one person that listens to it. If somebody got something from it, for us, we would be like, oh, that was a win. So that's what it is for me.
Yeah. So,
and then why good dude, good dad, Ben or Jordan?
Yeah. Why good dude, good dad? So, to be honest, that was the name came from just me praying, and I really felt like, so I'm a believer. I know that you guys are as well. I came out of stroke, and I literally was like, God, why did I survive? Like I was totally cool until one moment. It's funny. I was literally sitting on the toilet. I'm sorry, I have to say it. I was sitting on the toilet, and I literally just broke down crying out of nowhere. Like wasn't thinking about anything, and I just like literally, I was like, God, I'm so grateful that I'm here. Why am I here now? Like, what's the point of all this? And I literally heard like it wasn't like audible here. I just like it came good dude, good dad, and I was like, I don't even know what that is. So over the next few days, it turned into me being told being told I should do a podcast. And that's not something that's in my wheelhouse. I actually hate the sound of my own voice. It really bothers me. And so I was like I told you, it was to pass along things to my son. And at the same time, I hit a moment where there was some men that were in my life that weren't acting that I felt like good men. They had said that they were, they had pretended like they were, they had all this different stuff. And then just to find out, one dude was cheating on his wife through all 5 of their kids, and another dude was doing some other sketchy stuff. And I was just like, no, it's time for someone to hop on and kind of call men out on their BS and say, hey, if we're really going to say that we're men, say that we're Christians, say that we love God and all these different things, I think we need to be held to a standard. So it started as that. Ben's kind of softened me up a little bit. And now it's like just about impacting guys, it's so crucial. The father as the head of the family is very crucial in society as men. And then just find like that safe space for all of us to get together and be able to communicate with one another. So that's why good dude, good dad.
Love it. Love it. So you mentioned the word standard, right? You kind of had this like maybe more aggressive standard, and then Ben softened you up. I would love for each of you to answer, what do you think the role of the father is?
Ooh. All right. You're looking at me, so I'm going first. That's a great question. I think, if we were to look at the only definition that I would see as father would be looking at the Bible, right? And kind of applying fathering like the father. So what I think a father is in modern day and in real life is setting the tone for your family in everything that you do. So that is how I conduct myself, obviously at home with my children, with my wife, with my dog, with family. It's how I conduct myself in my professional life as well. Because I think a father to me is somebody that is going to be that same strong character, that same moral compass, no matter where you're at. Obviously, it's your family, so that's really where the fathering comes in. But I'm not really answering this because it's a tricky question. But fathering like the father just means loving unconditionally, still having the ability to discipline, but discipline out of a place of love, being trustworthy, being a man of my word, having integrity in my choices and in the way I speak to my wife and to my kids, and overall just leading from the front in everything I do within my family.
Yeah.
Love it. How about you, Jordan?
Yeah. I actually really like this question because this is a question that we ask everybody on our podcast, like, what does it mean to be a good dude, good dad? And honestly, there's so many, everyone takes their definition slightly different, but relatively, I think it's all relatively the same. Like he said, we had someone come on that said father like the father. And I thought that was the most incredible way of explaining it to date. A lot of it, I think, is leading from the front and leading by example, right? Being that same person consistently throughout your life in everything that you do and not compartmentalizing different parts and acting different ways with different people, but choosing to be an example, a light, a loving, kind, gentle, but at the same time standing firm on your beliefs and being the shield and the spear for your family, but doing that in a way that gives God the glory the entire time. So, yeah, that's what that means to me, I guess.
So, yeah, I love it. So let me ask this, because I think dudes really like just practical, like give me something that my day should look like. Ben, you talked about the way you handle your dog to the way you speak to your wife. You're like some of these kind of like practical things. Jordan, you used a word gentle. Love that word gentle. Like, am I gentle with my family? But if you were to give, say, a brand new dad, okay, you're at the hospital, this kid just had his first baby, and what are you going to tell him practically how to show up for his family?
Yeah, I would say be realistic with your expectations. Don't expect to magically be able to do all things at all times for every single, person in your life at that time. I would say be very intentional with your time. For me, a practicality for fathering to a new dad or to a 50-year something dad would be the simple component of being intentional with your time, and not just being intentional with your time and being in the same room as your family, but genuinely spending and pouring into your family, not just being a fly on the wall or a bum on the couch, but being intentional with how you are engaging with your family is like the one most prac app thing I would give.
Yeah, I'd give.
Yeah. What does it mean to be intentional?
What does it mean to be intentional? Sorry, I thought it cut out for a second.
Yeah, like practically, what does it mean to be intentional with your kid?
Yeah, so intentional is time, right? Kids don't care about a lot of other things, but every single kid craves attention and they crave your time. So the intentionality component is being intentional with how I choose to spend my time. I could sit there and I could be on my phone scrolling Instagram or worrying about, X, Y, and Z at work. Yeah, I'm there. You're intentionally being there. Or I could put my phone down and get on the ground, be on their level and build some magnets with them. And those two different components is drastically different. I'm both present, but one of them you're actually physically pouring into. And that's what I mean with the intentionality component.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah. Because it's easier to like be in the room, right? And feel like, hey, I'm winning compared to a lot of dads out there. At least I'm here. But then really missing the opportunity to have a connection with your kid. It's like, do you know them and do they know you?
Exactly.
How about you, Jordan? What would you give that guy that advice in the hospital room?
Two things, one is, something that was beautiful that someone said recently on our podcast was, remember you're a new dad every day. So give yourself grace for your imperfections, because every day is going to be a new experience, no matter how many days that you've been a dad. So give yourself grace, first of all. And second of all is make sure that they know that you love them. So for me, that's physically saying, I love you. And I think it's cool. I mean, I've once heard a dad doesn't tell you that he loves you, he shows you. And I think both. I think you need to physically tell your kids that you love them. And think you need to show them that you love them. Part of that is being intentional, like Ben said, being in there, being down at their level, communicating with them. The other thing is caring, like letting them know that you care about their lives. So like ask them questions, from a young age. It doesn't matter, and say, I love you. It's not that hard, but it's something that, knowing from almost dying, is that I could not have told my son enough that I loved him, even though I said it every day, multiple times. I wish I could have said it 10 more times, when I was getting wheeled in. So that's mine.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a huge component to bring up. Like, do you tell your kid you love them? I don't know, you hear stories of men saying that their dad never said, I love you to them. I know even just me putting my hand on my son's shoulder, right? My son's 15 right now. Just that act of putting my hand on his shoulder in church or, for working in the yard. Yesterday, we fixed the dryer. We put a new heating element in the dryer, right? And it's like, this could have been a total crap show, stressed out and annoyed, but we just did it. And I wouldn't say we were both like psyched the whole time, right? I cut myself, he dropped something, right? And also giving some space for him to be like, oh my gosh, this, whatever. But those things together, so the I love you, the physical power that we have to touch. So give me each of your opinion on that. I made a joke before we hit recording about, interviewing you both and like, did your dad hug you as a kid? But maybe give me each of your perspective, thoughts around physical touch as a man, either that you felt like you received or you feel like you're giving to your kids right now.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think old school mentality of being a man, is kind of being like that macho guy. You don't show emotion, you don't show fear. You say I love you maybe on occasion. Honestly, I think that's kind of crap, and I think it's kind of lame. I think it takes a lot more character and a lot more strength to be able to show your vulnerable side to, if it were speaking specifically to our children. But I hug and love on my boys all day long. I tell them I love you. I tell them, just how awesome they are, how good looking they are. I'll give them, usually before I leave for work, I'll give all three of my kids, a kiss, hug. Then obviously with the boys, I'll give them knucks too, just to, throw in that fun little thing. But I think that a father needs to be showing affection and to actually, use touch and to use your words and use your emotions with your boy, especially my daughter, right? Like my daughter, I'm going to do that all day long. But with my sons, I want them to know, like, yeah, like I love you and I'm going to show you until you push me off. And then you better be able to, out jujitsu me, because I'm still going to give you that kiss. So that's kind of my thoughts on it.
Yeah. Love it. How about you, Jordan?
Yeah. I mean, especially with my daughter, right? A father's a daughter's first love. So setting that standard of what love actually means. One, I think it's important to show your kids that you love your wife. So hugging and kissing my wife in front of my kids, even if they're like, oh, yuck, I think that's a massive thing, because growing up, that's what my parents did. They were very open about that. And, most people would say that was gross, but it constantly reminded me that in a world of like full of divorce, that my parents were like deeply in love with each other. And to this day, I will say the same thing. They were deeply in love with each other. I hug and kiss my kids all the time. I think it's appropriate, especially for your daughter, so that they know eventually, when they find a spouse, that they find the right man, and by the way that they get treated and by the way that I treat their mom. And then my son, I love, my son loves think about it. The kids always love to wrestle. They love that physical contact, right? They love, most men's love language, right, is physical touch, right? And for an appropriate version for a father and son would be wrestling and hugging. And I kiss the top of his head and he likes to snuggle with me. In fact, last night he just would not sleep because he wanted to hang out next to me and lay in bed and talk about how we have a red light in our room for like an hour and a half. So I think I don't only think it's important. I think it's crucial in their development of love. And so that when they become dads, there's a standard already set for them on what they should be doing for their kids.
Yeah, I love it. How old is your son?
My son's 4.
Yeah, so sick. So it's like I've cultivated that with my son. He's 15, and my wife and one of my daughters are in Texas this week. And anyways, so my son and I watched The Terminal List in 2 days. Because I had seen it, he hadn't seen it.
Right.
But like we're not like cuddling on the couch, but there's a couple times we're on the couch and we're like watching some guy get gutted, while my son's also like leaning over, put his head on my shoulder for a minute, and then flip to dinner and he's just pissing off my 18-year-old because he's in that just goofy 15-year-old boy mode. But the fact that like even before bed last night, he runs up. He's like, "Oh, Dad, let me," because I was tired, dude. I'm jet lagged from a trip. And so he locked down the house for me, like shut the doors, everything. And he ran in and he's like, "Give me a hug tonight." So I think if you cultivate that, right, from 4 to 15, I joke with him. He wouldn't do it, unfortunately. But the scene in, what is that movie with the dad where they kiss on the lips? The Christmas movie, I forget, dude, with Will Ferrell and whoever. When he picks him up at the airport.
Oh, is that
Step
whatever? No, it's not Step Brothers.
Is that the one with Mark Wahlberg?
The one with Mark Wahlberg and Will Ferrell, and
it's like
Daddy's Home.
Daddy's Home.
I think that might be it. Anyways, I joke he wouldn't go there. But the point is, like, cultivating that physical touch, I think, is so critical with our kids. Now, real quick, let me take a step back and just get each of you. Jordan, you're 33. You have 2 kids and 1 on the way. And then how many years you've been married?
We've been married for 6 years. And then, 6 years, I think,
sick.
now.
And how old are your 2?
So my oldest is 4. My daughter is 2.
Okay.
And then we have 1 due in October.
Yeah, baby. That's awesome. And then Ben, how many years you've been married and how old are your kids?
7 years married. My daughter's 5. My middle boy is 3. And my youngest is 1.5.
Nice. And any more coming in down the pipe or what?
I pray no. I mean, no.
The one point of contention in their marriage.
I'm set, man. I'm solid. I love the 3 kids that God's blessed me with. I am good. So I'm going to do everything I can to obviously make sure we don't have another one. But if it was up to my wife, we would definitely have 1 more.
Yeah, I'll tell you. So I'm 41. We have 5. My oldest is 18. My youngest is 11.
Nice.
And my one regret is getting a vasectomy. Which I don't know how many kids I would have, but if I would go back, I wouldn't have done it. Yeah. And it's funny because some of my first podcast episodes were interviewing my friends about their funny vasectomy stories.
Yeah.
So anyways, that's some food for thought.
Yeah. No.
For each of you, when did you embrace fatherhood? So I think this is a critical component for men to understand, is I think there's this belief that the minute you hear you're going to be a dad, to you see your baby delivered, to them walking, to them talking, at what point for each of you did you go, this matters and I want to embrace the importance of this?
Yeah, I love that question. For us, I was ready. I'm a 5 years older than my wife. So I was ready to have kids way sooner than she was. And so when she ended up telling me we were pregnant, I was like so stoked, right? I was like, yes, like I want to be a dad. I hope it's a boy first. I want to teach him to be rough and tough, to be a protector, all that fun stuff, right? And then fast forward, we found out it was a girl. It took like the wind out of my sails, if I'm just being 100% honest. And then fast forward to delivery, it was this awesome moment. I saw like how amazing like women are in general, but like, my wife, like being a rock star, and I'm like, dang, dude, like that's dope. That's my wife just did that. And then it was that night after she was born, my wife was sleeping and it was just me and my little girl, and I was holding her in that hospital room and I was praying over her, and dude, I just had like just tears just start flowing, and I was like, I'm about to tear up now thinking about it. But I just had, in that moment, I was like, I am going to be the best father I know how to be. And I'm going to be diligent in making sure my kids will never not like understand what that is. And I would say for me, it was that night when I held her. It wasn't the very first time I held her. It was probably like the 5th time I held her. But that night for me was it.
It's beautiful. Love it. How about you, Jordan?
I'm a weird freak in the way that I've always wanted to be a dad. Like when you're a little kid and people ask you like, what do you want to be when you grow up? Like my first thing was like G.I. Joe and fighter pilot. And then right after that was, but a dad. And,
nice.
And I was, I was blessed to have an awesome dad. My dad and I have a really rad relationship. He, did a lot of the same things that you were talking about. Like you're talking about you and your son were fixing the dryer. That's stuff that I did with my dad on the reg. And he was my hockey coach. He was my football coach. He was my karate. He went to do that. He learned how to snowboard with me. So my entire life, I really wanted to be a dad. And then we found out we were pregnant, and I found out that we were going to have a boy. And I was just over the moon, right? Because I'm the oldest in my family. And I was just so excited. And then it was like the first weekend, and my son would just not stop crying. And I was just so exhausted. And I just remember like sitting in the room, and I'm like, dude, I suck at this. And I'm like, this is not as much fun as I thought it was going to be. And then I just overwhelmingly, my son, like, I don't know, it sounds like a movie. He happened to calm down right in that moment. And I just like looked at him because he finally had fallen asleep. And I was just like, it's tough, but I love this. Like, and I was like, it was like this up and down of emotion. So that being said, like, I've always wanted to be a dad, but even if you feel like you're super prepped to be a dad, and then you have those moments where you're like, dude, this is really hard and this kind of sucks. It's totally cool to have those moments too, because I think that's part of just being a dad.
For sure. I think that's the embracing the messiness of life, right? Like, I mean, you find that in your marriage, you find that in your relationships, your opportunity to be a father or a husband. It's a craft, right? Like, we're never going to master this. And that's kind of the beauty of it. So enjoy the journey of it. Yeah. Do you, Jordan, think that you're better than Ben and I because you had a boy first and we had girls?
No. Yes. No, I was kidding.
Because the way you said it, it felt like you're better than us.
Yeah. I'm not going to say I'm better than you. Just the fact that, no, I was kidding.
Honestly, before we shift gears and you ask us the next question though, I think it's super important I think having my daughter first genuinely made me a better dad. I would like to think I would still be like this, as good of a dad as I am now. But I think God knew I needed my daughter first. I needed like that softening in my heart. I needed the ability to learn. My daughter taught me how to be vulnerable. And she obviously has no clue. She's 5, right? But she taught me what it means to be vulnerable. And my wife jokes about it all the time now, because my daughter will do something and I'll get like glossy eyed, versus my wife's like, we've been together for 11 years and I've never once made you teary eyed. I'm like, well, yeah, because she's my baby girl, But so I had to say that. It's just like, I think she taught me. I think she just taught me how to be the dad that I am right now.
Yeah. No, I'm glad you paused, because I think that there's some sort of this feeling of like, I want to have a son, right? Which is great and fantastic. It's like, I love my boy, but I have 4 girls and a son. And God knew that that's what I needed, just like for you, Ben, and just like you, Jordan. Like, he gives us what it is that he wants us to steward. And my relationship with my girls is so deep, so important. And same with my son. But let's just shift for a second here and think about, okay, the way that you and I are showing up for our son and our daughters, the tone, it's been brought up, the way we love our wives. And I don't know how to phrase this question. It's kind of a little bit of a legacy question, but if we're kingdom-minded people, how do we show up for our kids now, thinking about, let's say, 100 years from now or 500 years from now? When I say that, what comes up for each of you as like what's important? Because I think it's, like on our mind is like, okay, I want to do a rite of passage for my son when he's 13 or when he's 15, or I want to have like a great experience when my daughter gets married, right? I want to really be there and be present. I want to be a great grandfather, whatever. But what comes up for you as really critical, important for you to do in this lifetime, thinking 100 or 500 years from now?
That's a great question. Mine is going to sound simple, but obviously we know it's not as simple as it sounds. But for me, genuinely, it would be my legacy, and what I would want them to talk about 500 years from now would be that Ben was a man of integrity, and he was a man of his word. And I feel like people in today's world, especially with the fun social media and instant gratification and everyone wanting a seat at the table for every freaking decision that's out there, I think we've lost sight of truly being like a man of your word and a man of integrity. And when I say a man of integrity, I mean, I want my family for years to come to be able to talk about the things that I did behind closed doors, when there was no one around, when there was no cameras, when there was no podcast, when there was not a quote unquote show to be put on, but it was just me, who I am, living the way I say I'm living on these shows. That's to me what a legacy would be, is them talking about, dang, he was like such a genuinely good guy, and he did what he said he did. And I think for me, that's like the most powerful thing that could ever exist.
Love it.
That,
How about you, Jordan?
yeah, that's a loaded question. It's actually something I've been kind of playing around with lately. Because early on, or several years ago, I was all caught up in being the one financially. That was kind of my definition was skewed and it's kind of wrong. Like there was like the good, like there was how do I explain this without sounding weird?
Sound weird.
I'm trying to process it. The identity was caught up in loving God and integrity and all that, but it was like so hyper focused on financial, being the person to set the generations and generations. And I think you should. I think that is important. You know, the Bible does call us to leave something for the kids, right? But I think I got too hyper focused on that. And lately I've been processing that same exact thought in my prayer life and in my personal life and at home and journaling and that kind of stuff. And I think it's more that I want my family to know. I want to kind of be a pillar that my kids can look back and go, that was a man of God. That was a man of integrity. That was a man of love. And that's the kind of character that we can strive towards. That he wasn't perfect. He wasn't trying to be perfect, but he also didn't hold anyone else to perfection, and he loved everyone the way that he should. So that's kind of been my whole change of legacy lately, is that I just like Ben was saying, I want to make sure that I'm the man that's consistent across in front of people, whether if I ever stand in front of 10,000 people or it's just me by myself and I think no one's watching, is being that same person consistently, so that my kids and my kids' kids and my kids' kids' kids knows what's possible in that.
Did you have another thought on that, Ben?
No, sorry.
Okay. So now bring it down to a little bit more of a micro, but I mean, as far as like you're in my lifetime, it'll feel macro. Imagine your kid's 18 years old. They're about to leave the house for whatever reason. They're going to college. They're going to go travel. They're doing trade school, but they're leaving the coop. What do you, as they're driving away or as you're leaving them at school, what is the one thing other than them loving God that you want them to know that it's your responsibility to teach them?
Ooh, this is good. Because my wife and I talk about this one. For me and for my wife, it's and again, easier said than done, but it's teaching them their self-worth. And in that self-worth, it's how to learn to be who you are with knowing who you are first. And again, it sounds so much easier and so simple, but obviously, again, as we see around the world, there's a lot of people that lack self-worth. And so we want to make sure, and we do think it is our jobs to teach our children what their worth is.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's why we have an identity crisis in our world.
For sure.
Is that the fathers specifically have missed their opportunity to help their child to see their humanity, their value, their importance, aside from whether they're a football player, or a cheerleader, or good at the guitar, right? Like, you are a human being with a value, and you matter, and you are loved. How about you, Jordan? What do you want them to know from you?
It's a kind of a spin-off of that, but I just say go out and fail. Like, Go out and fail as much as possible, and just don't be afraid of it, because we're living in a society so afraid of failure, so afraid of rejection, and it plays into knowing your self-worth. Because if you know your self-worth, you're not afraid to fail, right? So just know that you just go out there and you do what you need to do. If you fail, I'm going to love you unconditionally. So don't worry about it. You'll pick yourself back up. You'll dust yourself back off, and you'll get after it again, and you'll figure out whatever comes next. So just go out and fail as much as possible.
That's good. So typically I ask, what's something you've learned about yourself as a father since, like what's something you've learned about yourself? Typical answer is like, I'm not as patient as I thought I was, etc. So I'm going to give it to you two parts. You can answer either way. Either A, what have you learned about yourself? Or what is a way that you've failed in the last couple of years, which you would have learned from? But if you want to share it from the perspective of a failure, what comes to mind for each of you?
That's a good one. I think for me, a failure that I would say over the last couple of years is with how intentional I try to be. There's definitely over the last couple of years with life and business and all that fun stuff that I was that bum on the couch at moments that I didn't want to be. And so for me, it was I had to look back at that and be like, dang, yeah, there's a time to recharge. There's a time to rest. But if I'm going to be intentional and say I'm going to be intentional, and then I was sitting in the room on the couch, yeah, I was there, but I wasn't there. And I think for me that was a good failure lesson. And this happened to me specifically September 2023-ish, give or take. It's when our third baby was born. I got super sick. I ended up having MRSA, didn't know I had MRSA. And I just went through this cycle of thinking like I was just so drained from life and from work. And so I would come home from work and I'd tell my wife, I'm like, hey, I just need like 5 minutes. I would be there in the room, right? So I'm present, but I would need just like that second to like catch my wind from work. And it kind of hit me because I was sitting there one time and I was like, dang, I gave everybody else that I encountered today my 100, and I'm coming home and giving the people that I say I want to give my 100 and I'm giving them 50. That for me was a failure and an eye opener. So that was mine.
It's good. Yeah.
Crap, dude, I had to take mine.
Let me, before you answer, Jordan, Ben, what shift did you make when you realized that? How did you shift from giving somebody 100 to now saving some of that energy for your family?
Great question. It came down to, again, being intentional with what I was saying yes to. So in my work life, there was things that I didn't need to say yes to. I'm not a heart surgeon. I'm not a brain surgeon. It's a running joke in my household that, my wife, was doing, like she was doing, a lot of like network marketing. So a lot of phone work. And I would sometimes tell her, hey, it's dinner time. Like, is your patient going to die right now? Like as a joke, right? Because it's you got to be intentional with what you're saying yes to. And I had to kind of relearn that when it came to my work-life balance. And I knew obviously I was sick at that time. So I needed to prioritize. So maybe I, left work an hour early because I was a little bit more, intentional with the things I was saying yes to throughout the day. And that gave me the strength and energy I needed to, one, get better, but two, to give my family more, to give my family what they deserved. And so for me, it was learning, again, I say it a lot and I talk about it a lot, but being like the intentionality, I had to learn what that meant in my work life during that season.
It's good. All right, Jordan.
Yeah. Mine's pretty similar though. Prioritizing the wrong things. I mean, I by nature, I'm a people pleaser and I say yes a lot to a lot of things. And I was saying yes to way too many things and not giving my family the priority that they needed. Outside, like outwardly, it would have looked like it. But when I was home, like when we were doing our time, I would let things pull me away constantly, to go, put out fires constantly. And I was just, it would be where you'd be in the middle of something and I just, oh, I got this phone call. I'm going to break away and I got to take care of this because I'm doing it for our family, because we need this, because we need that, because we need this, because we need that. And, over like the last 6 months, I would say that I've gotten to a place where I'm nowhere where I thought I would be professionally, like just nowhere. Like, I'm helping Ben run his cafe, which is something that if you would have asked me like a year ago, I would have been like, no, there's no way I would possibly do that. And so I feel like I'm learning to say no to certain things, and I'm learning to be open to saying yes to things that I didn't think that I would have previously said no to. I don't know if I think I just got all jumbled, but
because you can't do everything, right? I mean, it's just the reality. We think we can do everything, but we can't.
Well, not only that, it's just saying yes to things that you would think you should say yes to. Like, I'm like, oh yeah, I should say yes to this, but I should say no to that. Right. And I'm like, no, that's dumb. One is put my family first. And then second of all, like, be willing to be flexible.
Mm-hmm. Something that has helped me with that, I started doing a couple years ago, is when I sit down annually in January to do my 3-year, 5-year, 10-year kind of planning and goals, is I write down like an Excel, right? I got a column. What's 2024, 2028, 2035 is underneath the goals for the buckets. I put down how old I'll be, how old my kids will be. And I'm like, oh shit, I want to have a $10 million agency by this date. My daughter's going to be 28. Wait a second. Like, I want to be around to be a grandpa. I want to be fully present in X, Y, and Z. So it's helped me to put in perspective, like, oh, this season, and it's a big shift for me right now. My oldest daughter's leaving for college in freaking 20 days, dude.
Dang.
We live in Hawaii. She's going to Idaho. It's like, it's happening. I didn't think it would happen, but this idea, the last 11 years, I've had these 5 kids under my roof. Like, this is our world. I have 5 kids. Yeah, there's been different stages, elementary, middle, high school, but now it's about to shift massively. And so being hyper aware of this whole concept around 18 summers with your kid, and what does it look like beyond that?
How are you handling and prepping for that moment, for when she's leaving in the 20 days? Because I know I'm going to be, like, Ben and I have talked about this all the time. We're going to be an absolute mess.
Yeah. So there's been these micro moments, right? So she had this countdown for graduation, 100 days. So I added the app to my phone and I had the same thing, 100 days. And so there's certain things where it's like, kind of go to lunch a little bit more. I went and spoke. She went to a Christian high school, went and spoke, went to her chapels, was like as involved as I could be. And then there's also kind of this, like, what am I going to go to lunch with her every day for 100 days? There's also, not because I couldn't make that happen, but because you still want to kind of live life with a family unit, not. So we lived, and I'd say we were fully engaged in living. Couple micro moments. Her 18th birthday, I never have cried like that before. I seriously wept in the morning, bro. It was interesting. My wife's like, I've never seen you cry like this. And then my wife and I just took her to Italy all last week. So we had this epic time of just roaming Italy and, getting to order wine at dinner and all these things. And so there was a couple moments where I'm like, oh, I'm a terrible dad. Like, I was journaling on the plane and I'm like, wait a second. My daughter wanted to go to Italy with me, her, she brought a friend, but we went to a bar and got wine. We all decided, let's all go get tattoos. And I'm like, my wife and I are married 20 years. We're here with her.
That's awesome.
My daughter wants us to go get tattoos with her. We're ordering drinks, at this bar at 1 a.m. in Italy, right? We're doing this with her, whereas like she could be in the Bahamas with like 1,000 teenage boys doing this, but yet she's here with us. So it's like, it's ripping off a Band-Aid and having to remind myself there's a lot of good. And then when I start to think, did I prepare her enough? It's like, I know that this is the right moment for her to leave. Like if we kept her here, she would be stifled. And so this is the right move. And that's what makes it beautiful and freaking sad and hard and everything, is that like all good things shift, bro.
Oh yeah.
That's so awesome. My wife and I talk about all the time. Like one of our biggest dreams is we want to have a family that our kids, when they're grown, they want to be around still. Like that's like one of our biggest goals. So like the fact that you're saying your daughter wanted to go to Italy with you guys and get tattoos and have wine, like that is for us such a family dream that like when they have the opportunity where they could be out doing anything or being anywhere, that they still want to hang out with us because and genuinely, not like out of a place of like having to, you know? So that's so rad, dude.
And and that's the interesting part too, right? Is like kind of knowing when it's our time to walk away, because there are those, right? We're still 40-year-old parents, so there are still times we're like, "Yo, we definitely just need to walk and let whatever happens here happen here." Yeah, which is it's good. So I know we're coming to the end of our time. I have two more questions for you guys. The first question is about your own dads. Okay, it's a two-part question. You can answer both parts if you want. You don't have to. What's something that you really appreciated about your dad? And then what's something that you wish your dad would have done differently?
Ooh, it's also good too, because it's something I talk about. Well, for me, I also had an amazing father figure. My dad was like the dad to a freaking crap ton of boys, like and teenagers and all through high school, right? Throughout sports, he became the dad that a lot of these kids didn't have. And so I realized at a very young age how lucky I was to have that. But something that my dad gave me that is one of, I think, my biggest tools that I have, but I had to learn how to use this tool. And it's the tool of, no joke, like hard work. Like being willing to just do whatever the heck it takes to complete the mission in front of you, whatever it is, right? Yep. And so my dad was a hard freaking worker. He worked a ton. He built a very successful company from nothing. And so I learned what it meant to work hard, to earn, and to literally be somebody that would genuinely give you the shirt off his back. That was just my dad. He was even at their most wealthy point or wealthiest point, you would have never guessed it, right? Instead, he would have done things like gave a car to somebody that needed it, or, drove less of a nice car so he could help provide a different, vehicle for somebody else, and employed people that he shouldn't have employed for a long freaking time because he felt guilty because he was providing for that employee's family. And one of the biggest blessings that he ever gave me. But what I took away from him is, especially right now at the stage that my kids are at, I don't take it for granted, and I'm still very appreciative of how hard he worked to build the life that he was able to give my sister and I. But the one takeaway I took from him is that I will be present, that there is no dollar amount right now that can take me away from being as present with my children and my family at this stage of my life. When they're this young, I don't want them to go to the grandparents' house 24/7. I don't want to have a babysitter 24/7. My work can wait. And some people, that's not okay, because that means they're going to have to take a back seat to the quote unquote, what could be success in their current business right now. And I'm okay with that. Like, I think my businesses could be way up here. Instead, they're right here. They're still doing well. I'm very thankful. And but I know if I kept pushing the envelope for the last 6 years, I could be in a much different place. And I'm not saying you can't do both, but I made the choice to use a lot more of my time to be as present of a father as I could. And so, like I said, it's a blessing and a curse. I absolutely love my dad. We have a great relationship. He still works his freaking tail off at 60 years old, like he was when I was, a kid. and he still has to learn how to turn it off. He just doesn't know how sometimes.
Yeah, it's good.
Sorry, Jordan, you're up, dude.
No, your dad, dude, your dad is the man. I love your dad. Yeah, like I said, I had an awesome dad. He was very present in my life. And the one thing that I took away from him, and I love that he did, is that he was involved in like just about every activity in my life growing up. He was there. And, it was, I didn't do Boy Scouts. I did what's called Young Marines. My dad was there every weekend helping out. When I decided to take up hockey, my dad learned how to play ice hockey and then became one of my coaches in roller hockey and ice hockey. My dad was my football coach. My dad, I wanted to learn how to snowboard. He picked up snowboarding. I wanted to learn how to, I wanted dirt bikes. My dad got a dirt bike also, which, at the time I was like, man, that's so cool. If you're looking back at it now, I'm like, what a sucker, dude. Of course he did. Like, dirt bikes are super fun. It was just an excuse for him to spend money. But my dad is the man. I mean, he constantly showed me and told me that he loved me. He wasn't afraid to give me a hug. He is just an awesome example of being who you are behind closed doors. I mean, I've literally seen, like, we lost our business and we're homeless there for a little while. And I remember my parents literally giving the last $100 we had to somebody else who was in a worse position than us, which is pretty hard to believe at that time. They just believed that, they were doing the right thing and like didn't question it for 1 second. Like, legitimately, when people say give the shirt off your back, like it's not a figurative thing. My dad literally did that. So being that kind of person, I mean, he just set an awesome standard. Some things that, what's also super cool is that he was very open about the things that he was flawed in. And he would constantly tell me, he's like, Jordan, I don't want you. I'd be like, Dad, I want to be like you when I grow up. He's like, I don't want you to be like me. I want you to be better than me. I want you to stand on my shoulders and go farther than I went. So he's like, don't make the same mistakes I did. So there's times where he should have made moves like financially sooner. There's times where I felt like, he was like, hey, I waited on the Lord too long. He's like, I think it probably was just out of a state of fear. So don't be afraid to just take a step and let God direct you from there. He had, when I was younger, he had a little bit of an anger issue. He had a temper, and he said, hey man, I know my dad had it. I know that I have it, which means that, there might be a chance that you have it. So you need to know that early on and take steps to mitigate that. So, I just like Ben, we're probably two of the few people that are super blessed to have a dad like that.
Yeah. So the one thing, if you were to have change something, would it be the anger thing?
I think it would be to not be afraid to make decisions sooner.
Okay. That's a pretty big insight to see. Do you feel like you got that insight as a kid, that you felt like your dad took time to make decisions?
Yeah, there's times where he'll fully admit that he sat too long in fear and hid behind the fact. We've talked about this, so that's why I don't feel a problem saying it. Where he almost hid behind the sit and wait on the Lord too much, instead of just taking a step and having him let God direct him along. It sounds really churchy and cliche, but letting God direct you on the move. And he's like, man, yeah, it's easier to move an object that's in motion than one that's standing still. And he's like, there's been times where I got paralyzed out of fear of failure after failing, that I would repeat failure, that I stood still for too long. So that's one thing I learned.
That's good. Yeah. So here's why I asked the question, and I want dads listening to this to really hear this. Like, when your kid is 35 or 40 or 50 and they're asked this question, what do you want them to say? And the cool thing about the way that you guys answered it is you both had something that you wish they would have done differently, but it sounds like your dad each of your dads worked on those things, right? Because we're not trying to be perfect human beings. We're growing, we're progressing, we're living in community, which is our families, but to be vulnerable, to be open, right? And our kids are going to see, if we allow them to see the things that we're growing in, and it's going to have, impact on them for their lives. So with that being said, I'm going to ask this last question to each of you, because as Jordan, you were sharing the fear, in the last 9 months, I've listened to the book Outwitting the Devil like 4 or 5 times or something, just like this incredible book of overcoming fear. What is one resource each of you would give to a dad, saying this book, this resource, other than the Bible, has been highly impactful to me in my journey?
Oh, shoot, go for it.
A book that absolutely changed my life. It actually was in my early 20s. Was called Tender Warrior by Stu Weber. And he is a Army Ranger back in Vietnam, I believe. It's a little bit of an older book, but he talks about the 5 pillars of manhood. And at that time, I was in this dichotomy of wanting to be overly hyper masculine in my early 20s. I'm also a little bit short, so I had a little short man complex. And I was taking on an endeavor at the time that was pretty hefty. Ben and I had met at that time, and I was just struggling with a lot of things. I was struggling with God and what it meant to be a man. And in my eyes, Christian men were soft and all this different stuff. And he really laid out how you can be a warrior, how you can be a lover, how you can be a friend, how you can be all these different things and still be one guy. And he ties it back to how Christ was all these. And so completely changed my outlook on what a man could and should be. So Tender Warrior by Stu Weber.
Love it. Got it. Okay. Killer. How about you, Ben?
I was just trying to look on my phone. I think for me, it's not a parenting book, but it's more of like a life book. And it's called Grit by Angela Duckworth. And I'm a big fan of, I think we all are, obviously all 3 of us sitting in this room. I could tell just by, the things that we're doing, but, being gritty, right? And what grit really is. And that book helped me just as a man, as a leader, as a business owner, as a husband, as a father, because grit, is literally just doing what it takes and having passion and perseverance and taking all of that and putting it into whatever it is you're doing. And as a father, like there's so many times, as we all know, that you're just drained, you're exhausted mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, and you gotta have grit. You gotta freaking roll the sleeves up. You gotta look in the mirror. You gotta look yourself in your face and say, hey man, be a doer of the word and not a hearer only. And that takes grit, that takes being gritty. And I think being a dad and a husband with morals and ethics and Christian values is the definition of being gritty.
Dude, well said. Beautiful. I mean, I think that our world is so caught up because we're so comfortable in our American success, especially, is we have so many excuses and we're just little baby victims about so much. And this idea of grit is definitely kind of, you think of like guys in World War II or, whatever, you think of people who crossed the US, to come to California and Oregon and do all this stuff. You're like, dude, we do not live in a world where dudes can do that kind of stuff. And the beauty is like, we have the opportunity, if we look at our wife and our kids as that crossing America or coming to America or being in World War II, like all these people did these amazing things and we're finding ourselves caught up in comfort versus we finally have the opportunity to build an amazing marriage and an amazing family because we have the time and space to really do that and the longevity of life. So can you bring that deep core need that you and I have of grit? Can we bring that into our marriage?
I love that.
100%. Yeah.
Can we bring that into our kids?
Back in the day when you had to be gone for, I'm a huge history buff. World War II, you're there the entire time, right? 4 or 5 years overseas fighting a war. It's like, take that same tenacity and now just turn it inward towards your family. And if we do that, I mean, if you take that tenacity and that grit and that, that fight and you turn that towards fighting for your family, dude, you want to talk about being an impact. You want to talk about 200, 300, 400, 500 years from now. That's going to be the kind of impact right there.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yes. I love it. Well, my friends, thank you for being on here. Thank you for being good dudes, good dads, and for really just like waking up every day, putting your feet on the ground, saying, thank you, God, for this day, and then going after and stewarding well whatever he's put in front of you. I love knowing that there's other men who are just shooting for greatness in their marriages and in their relationships and their families, not just for today, but for 1,000 years from now. So thank you guys. Thank you for joining me in a great conversation. And I'm excited to see all that you do with Good Dude and Good Dad.
Likewise. Thank you for having us, man. This was awesome.
Yeah, thank you. We really appreciate it. We're excited. We like your podcast as well. It's awesome. Awesome.
What another incredible conversation. You know, what I loved most is having the three of us just sort of rap about fatherhood. It just goes to show that, you know, we can pause and really lean into this really important critical role, fatherhood, and that it matters. And the way that we talk about our own dads, the way that we talk about our kids, like this matters. My friends, I encourage you, start having these kinds of conversations with other dads. Let's move away from just the politics or just the sports, but lean into marriage and fatherhood. Men are hungry for vulnerable, real, and authentic conversations. My friends, if this is beneficial, if you enjoy these conversations, please write a review. It helps spread the word that fatherhood matters. Thank you to all you dads out there listening to the Fatherhood Field Notes podcast. What you do matters. Don't be like everybody else. Be yourself. That is who your kids, spouse, and community needs. This is your guide and Ed Shout. Together, let's rebel against the view that fatherhood has little impact and create lives engaged in mastering the craft of fatherhood. I look forward to hanging out with you next time.